If you're running a content team right now, you're probably spending somewhere between $8,000 and $15,000 a month once you add up the salaries, the tools, and the freelancers you bring in to fill the gaps. That's before you factor in the weeks a campaign sits in revision limbo. I want to show you a different way to run this. 3 tools, Claude, HeyGen, and 8N. Together, they handle what a full creative team used to do, and they do it for a fraction of that monthly number. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly how the stack works, how each tool connects to the next, and how to get a working version built without losing a week to set up. We've run this system to over 1,000 ad creatives, and no one on a team produced them. A workflow did, running in the background while everything else got done. Let's talk about where the money actually goes, because most people underestimate it until they sit down and add it up. You've got a copywriter handling scripts and ad copy, a video editor turning raw footage into finished assets, a designer building out static creatives, and usually some kind of project manager or ops person keeping all 3 of them pointed in the same direction. Each one is a separate invoice, and none of them are cheap. But the salary line isn't even the biggest problem. The real cost is everything that happens between the work getting assigned and the work getting done. You write a brief, your copywriter comes back with questions, you answer them, they send a draft, you revise it, it goes to the editor has notes, it loops back, and somewhere in that process, 2 weeks disappeared, and you've got 3 finished ads to show for it. That's the coordination overhead, and it's genuinely expensive because it's invisible. You don't see it on an invoice, but you feel it every time a campaign launch slips. Output is also kept in a way that feels obvious once you say it out loud. Human bandwidth is fixed. If you want to double your ad volume next month, you either push your existing team into overtime or you hire more people. There's no middle option, so most businesses just accept a slow drip of content and call it a strategy. The team produces what it can, and the pipeline stays thin. There's one more thing worth naming here. A full-time hire costs you money every single week, whether output is high or low. A slow month for your campaigns doesn't mean a slow month for payroll. You're paying for availability, not just what actually gets delivered. And on the weeks where nothing needs to be produced, that cost sits there anyway. The system I'm about to walk you through doesn't work like that. It doesn't have slow weeks. It doesn't need a brief explained twice. And it doesn't cap your output at whatever a 3-person team can physically finish before Friday. Start with Claude, because that's where the content actually begins. Feed it a product brief, which can be as simple as a few sentences describing what you're selling, who it's for, and what you want the ad to do, and it outputs ad scripts, hooks, and copy variations at scale. You're not writing one script and tweaking it manually 5 times. You're generating 10 or 20 structured variations in a single pass, each one targeting a slightly different angle or audience pain point. Claude is the brain of the stack. Everything downstream depends on what it produces here. HeyGen takes those scripts and turns them into finished video. It renders a talking head ad using a digital avatar, which means no camera setup, no editor, no studio booking, no talent scheduling. You pick an avatar, feed in the script, and HeyGen produces a video that looks like someone recorded it directly to camera. The output quality is good enough for the thing it's actually replacing, which isn't a Super Bowl spot. It's the 50 test creatives your current team is too slow and too expensive to produce. That's the comparison that matters. And 8, N is what holds this together. Think of it as the connective tissue between Claude and HeyGen. It automates the handoff. So once Claude generates a script, N8N picks it up, passes it to HeyGen via API, waits for the render to finish, and then routes the completed video to wherever it needs to go, whether that's a Google Drive folder, a Slack channel, or directly into your CMS. You set the workflow once, and it runs on a schedule without you touching it again. Start with Claude, because that's where the content actually begins. Feed it a product brief, which can be as simple as a few sentences describing what you're selling, who it's for, and what you want the ad to do, and it outputs ad scripts, hooks, and copy variations at scale. You're not writing one script and tweaking it manually 5 times. You're generating 10 or 20 structured variations in a single pass, each one targeting a slightly different angle or audience pain point. Claude is the brain of the stack. Everything downstream depends on what it produces here. HeyGen takes those scripts and turns them into finished video. It renders a talking head ad using a digital avatar, which means no camera setup, no editor, no studio booking, no talent scheduling. You pick an avatar, feed in the script, and HeyGen produces a video that looks like someone recorded it directly to camera. The output quality is good enough for the thing it's actually replacing, which isn't a Super Bowl spot. It's the 50 test creatives your current team is too slow and too expensive to produce. That's the comparison that matters. HeyGen is what holds this together. Think of it as the connective tissue between Claude and HeyGen. It automates the handoff, so once Claude generates a script and HeyGen picks it up, passes it to HeyGen via API, waits for the render to finish, and then routes the completed video to wherever it needs to go, whether that's a Google Drive folder, a Slack channel, or directly into your CMS. You set the workflow once and it runs on a schedule without you touching it again. Here's what one full cycle looks like in practice. Say you're running ads for a SaaS productivity tool. You drop in a brief, the product name, the core benefit, the target user, and the primary hook you want to test. Claude generates 10 script variations in under a minute. Then HeyGen picks those up and fires them to HeyGen one by one. HeyGen renders each video in under 10 minutes. By the time you come back from lunch, you've got 10 finished video ads sitting in a folder, ready to test. Now do the volume math on that. If HeyGen renders one video in 10 minutes, and HeyGen runs the workflow on a schedule, you're looking at output potential in a single day that a small team couldn't hit in a week. The system doesn't slow down at the end of the day. It doesn't need the weekend off, and it doesn't get backed up when a campaign brief lands on a Thursday afternoon. That's the case for the stack. Knowing what the tools do, though, is different from knowing how to connect them without spending 3 days debugging the setup. Before you open a single tool, decide what you actually need. Not what sounds useful, not what you might need eventually. What's the one content type that's costing you the most time and money right now? Short-form video ads, static copy, email sequences. Pick one and build the entire stack around producing that thing first. Most people skip this step and end up with a half-configured workflow that does 3 things poorly instead of one thing reliably. Once you know your output, start with Claude Code. You don't need a developer background to make this work. The prompt structure that gets you 10 usable ad scripts is simpler than you'd expect. Product name, core benefit, target audience, and the specific problem the ad should open on. That's the brief. Drop it in. Tell Claude how many variations you want and what format each script should follow, and it handles the rest. Spend 30 minutes getting that prompt right, and every script batch after that takes seconds. For HeyGen, resist the urge to customize before the workflow is stable. One avatar, one aspect ratio, one template. That's it to start. The mistake most people make is spending 2 days picking the perfect avatar and testing fonts before they've confirmed the API handoff even works. Prove the pipeline first, then personalize. An avatar that actually ships beats the perfect one that's still being configured. The N8N side of this is 3 nodes at its core. A trigger that fires the workflow, a call to the Claude API that pulls in your brief and returns the scripts, and a call to the HeyGen API that takes each script and kicks off a render. That's the whole thing at its simplest. Get those 3 nodes talking to each other and running cleanly before you add anything else. Routing to Google Drive, posting to Slack, logging to a sheet, all of that comes after the core loop is proven, not before. The biggest time drain in this build isn't technical, it's the instinct to polish every output before anything ships. That's the wrong mental model for this stack. The point isn't a perfect ad on the first pass. It's 50 test creatives in the time it used to take to brief one. Speed and volume are what make this worth building. So get the workflow running, let it produce, and iterate from what actually performs. Most people can have a working version of this live within a day if they follow that sequence and don't backtrack. The stack costs less per month than a single mid-level hire and puts out more raw volume than most 3-person teams can manage. But the real shift isn't the cost line, it's that you stop being limited by how many people you have and start running content like an actual media operation. The Denit N8N workflow template is linked below if you want to skip the build from scratch part. Subscribe so you don't miss the next breakdown, because we're going deeper on the Claude prompting layer next week.